Direct from the heart of Midland, this is the March 2016 edition of MPS Today. My name is Scott Cochran, Auxiliary Education Curriculum Specialist and host of the show. We have a great show for you today. To start off, you'll meet Andrea Vargas. She's the Jefferson Middle School student who won the 2016 Rick Riordan Mythology Contest sponsored by Scholastic. You'll get the latest news from the high schools in the Counselor's Corner, and we'll learn more about the new SAT. Now, all of our 11th grade students will be taking the new SAT this spring, so this is particularly timely information. Now, remember that you can find all of our programming, including our board meetings, select sporting events and concerts, MPS Today and MPS on the Move shows on our YouTube site. Just go to the Midland Public Schools website, www.midlandps.org, click on the YouTube button, and you'll find all of our shows there. Now let's welcome our guests to the studio. From Jefferson Middle School, we have teacher Mary Zeitler and student Andrea Vargas. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hi. Well, Andrea, tell us a little bit about yourself. You're a Jefferson Middle School student. What grade?
I'm in 7th grade.
All right. And what do you like about school, and what do you do for fun when you're not at school?
Well, for fun, I like to read, which might have helped with my writing a little bit.
Sure. And
at school, my favorite subjects are English, orchestra, and World of Tech.
Okay. What do you play in the orchestra?
I play violin in the orchestra.
Great. So that sounds like fun. Now, Mrs. Zeitler, you've been at Jefferson for a while now, teaching English?
25 years, yeah. Teaching English, 7th grade English, all of those years, sometimes 8th grade English.
Okay. And what do you enjoy most about teaching the middle school age?
They make me laugh, bottom line. Every day it's something new, and they have a lot of energy, a lot of creativity.
Yeah, that's for sure. It's great. It's a fun place to be, middle school, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Good. Well, Mrs. Zeitler, tell us a little bit about this mythology contest. How do we find out about it and all that kind of good stuff?
Well, I have a contest board on my front wall, and Scholastic sent out, as they always do, flyers, Scholastic flyers, book orders, and it was promoted in that flyer. So I hung it up on the contest board, and actually 2 of my students picked up on that and submitted stories to it, Andrea being one of those.
Great. Now, Andrea, Rick Riordan, are you familiar with his work?
Very, very familiar. He's my favorite author, and so is my sister, so we kind of bond and read them all the time.
So what are some of the favorite books of his that you've read?
I really enjoy his Greek heroes and Greek gods ones because you focus less on the story plotline, which is really good, but he can add more humor in there he can just let his humor be in there.
Sure. He's quite a writer, isn't he?
He is quite a writer, and he writes a lot.
And do you find a lot of students enjoy his work in your classes?
Yes, I have a whole cubbyhole of books of all of his series, and they're constantly checked out.
So you mentioned it. I mean, so some of his most well-known works are kind of rewrites of Greek mythology and Roman gods, and so you were kind of inspired by that, it sounds like.
Yeah.
So tell us about your story. What's the title and what's it about?
The name is The Lily Pad and Eternal Flower. It's about a character named Lily. The story is set in olden day China, and she's a warrior. She's physically fit, mentally fit. She just doesn't want to be sold away or married away, like just any piece of whatever.
Okay. So she's a very strong character, it sounds like. Now, did you see some of yourself in this character, or is this somebody that you were developing completely?
She's who I want to be. I want to be as strong as her.
All right, great.
I see some of Andrea in that character.
Yeah.
Strong female protagonist, fights for what she believes in. Yes.
That's great. So when you were writing the story, I mean, what was the most exciting part for you, and what was the part that you struggled with the most? Was it plot development? Or?
Plot development actually happened quite quickly, but refinement was a little tougher because the story was good, but how to keep my voice consistent in the story was a little bit more difficult.
So tell us about that. How do you keep a voice consistent throughout the story?
I go over it and I kind of get into this mindset, like I am there, or I might listen to some music that kind of gets you thinking in a certain way.
Great. Now, Mrs. Zeitler, when you hear that, what does that make you think about?
I'm thrilled to hear her using the language of a writer as she's talking about her piece. So in the story itself, Andrea wrote it all. I didn't even know she was entering the contest until she stopped by at lunch one day and said, "Will you take a look at this?" And when I read it, immediately I was hooked by her lead. we worked with leads much earlier in the year with personal experience narratives. We did not do any mythology writing this year. We read some myths, but we didn't do any writing. But her lead right from the get-go was fantastic, and it's very lyrical and very descriptive, and her character was strong, as we already noted, and her description was good the whole way through. She incorporated dialogue. I saw in there she was varying her sentence structures, including her sentence starts, which we had worked on previously with narration too, and she's just a very strong writer. She's somebody who's willing to craft her work, who's willing to take the time to look at it and with fresh eyes and revise. And the piece turned out to be a really high quality piece of literature.
That's great. And it must feel nice to hear that.
It does. 'Cause, when you do write, you do put a lot of work into it, kind of put a piece of your soul in there.
Yeah.
So when it turns out to be a success, it feels really, really good.
Sure. Now, Andrea, when you think about that work, what was the name of it again?
The lily pad.
The lily pad. So you think about the lily pad, how much of the time that you put into it was in the initial writing, and how much of the time was in the editing and revising? And
I didn't take too long to jot it down at first, because I had the idea developed quite quickly. The revising is what really took the time.
You feel like that's an ongoing process? You could keep that.
Like, just even with anything I write, one thing, maybe the beginning is simple enough, but going back you can add so much, even if you're just typing it up.
So how do you know when you're done? How do you know when that's the last revision and I'm ready to move on?
When the timeline is there. Or, yeah, mostly then, because there's always something you can add, or when you feel satisfied. Like, I can't do anything else. There might be something else, but I can't do anything, and I feel like this is good enough to go where it needs to go.
Okay, that sounds great. Now, Andrea, what are your plans for the rest of the school year, as far as in school or for activities outside of school?
Well, I'm really trying hard to pick up everything Mrs. Zeitler teaches, like those details, like, hey, pay attention to how this sentence structure works. And then at home, I'm just kind of trying to practice, like, ooh, I got this idea. Jot it down, revise it, and really develop the idea, which is the hardest thing. My opinion is the hardest thing to do in writing.
Okay, so you keep working on that. That's awesome. And I just wanted to cycle back, Mrs. Zeitler, tell us a little bit about the scope of the contest, because I hadn't heard about it, and maybe some of our viewers haven't either. So is this a Midland contest, a Michigan contest?
It was put out by Scholastic and was, as far as I know, international. I mean, I'm sure that they ship internationally those flyers. And over almost 10,000 people applied. It was for 7th through 9th grade. Is that correct? Or
it was, I think, more from 5th grade to 9th grade.
Was it? Okay. So, yeah, kind of the middle years.
Yeah.
And you had to write a myth, an original myth. So, and it was in conjunction with Rick Riordan's newest book coming out, Magnus Chase. What's the subtitle of that book?
Magnus Chase, Gods of Asgard.
Thank you. So that's why the Skype was part of the prize with Mr. Riordan, because he is very much known for his mythology, his Norse, his Egyptian, and most especially his Greek mythology-based books.
So you all had a chance to Skype with him as part of the prize for winning.
Yes, it was fantastic.
I bet that was amazing. Did you enjoy that?
I loved it so much.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations, Andrea. I'm very proud of you, and we're excited to hear what a great job you did.
Thank you.
And it's great to hear you talk about your writing, too. So.
Can I say, too, she's a part of the Alden B. Dow Home and Studio Young Writers Studio.
Yes.
So she writes every month for Tuesdays, right? She meets at the studio and writes for an hour and a half and shares. And so you may see her writing in other venues, too. We're trying to work on maybe getting some of that writing published, too.
And we really appreciate the Alden Dow Home and Studio for helping with that project.
Yes.
Too. It's a great project. And we thank you for all the work that you do, Mrs. Zeitler, with your students.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure.
It's awesome. We appreciate it very much. Well, thanks for coming in to talk about your work today.
Thank you.
You bet. Well, up next is our Counselor's Corner, and then after that, you'll learn more about the new SAT. And as we go out to our commercial break, we'll hear a little bit from Andrea as she reads from her story, The Lily Pad. So stick around for more MPS Today right after this.
The Legend of the Lily Pad, an Eternal Flower. Back when the coast of China were clear of mechanics and chemicals, a time when the Rocky Mountains that were green, dark green, hugged the coast, when every morning like clockwork a thick fog would roll in from the night's cold, clashing with the morning's warmth, a darling girl named Lily was. The darling girl had pure, pale skin, sparkling green eyes, and pitch-black hair. However, she would ignore you if you complimented any of those features. Lily was strong. She did not want to be a dainty housewife, but instead an admired warrior protecting the village. Hiding behind the fir trees, she would silently watch the local militia and copy them until her saber handling was more agile than the general's. She was pretty. She was healthy. Her family had high rankings in the social class. And once again, she was a darling girl. That caused a problem. Constantly, Lily would be presented like a cow for trade to a possible husband. It was almost like her parents wanted to get rid of her. One night, after a particularly bad game of show and tell, she escaped her house and walked to the rocky coast. She picked up a cool gray stone, one out of many, and thrust it out into the water, making it skip. The man she had been presented to was a pig. He was huge, slow, stank of too many spices used to cover up his manly odor, and in her gut she knew that he did not respect women. She could tell by the way he wouldn't look at his own mother or hers, and his lack of any manners. The worst thing, he was the #1 candidate. That oaf was rich, and despite those blank looks, he was smart enough to know that a wife like Lily was quite a gain. Plink, plink, plink. The anger at her parents gave her strength in throwing the stone. Plink, plink, plink. Another stone for that fat oaf, the husband candidate. Hong was his name, wasn't it? She carefully observed the next stone. It was pale gray, pure bumps or scratches. She was tempted to pocket the item, but she was overcome with a new wave of frustration. Plink, plink, dunk. Lily's head snapped in the direction of an unfamiliar noise. In that direction was a man in a rickety boat. The man, however, had class and grace. She could see his muscles through his simple brown tunic, and his gentle but intent eyes made her heart pound. How? He softly chuckled. Lily's own eyes widened in shock and embarrassment with realization that he just hit him with a rock. Quickly she bowed, but not before noticing that the man had an aura, a white one that illuminated the area around the boat. The stone seemed to be flying tonight, my lady. Humor twinkled in those beautiful eyes that held twinges of purple. Her cheeks became tinted. But my, what an arm you have! Need I assume that you're not the typical dainty woman? Lily just said nothing, but turned her head in humility. I just think that women should have strength too, she said quietly, then gasped at her lack of manners and quickly covered her mouth. No, no, he spoke gently. It's not every day that I find someone like you. Come, follow me to a place, just for a little while, and we could test our strengths. I presume you do not have many freedoms, and that's a shame for someone as able as you. Lily stepped back in hesitation. We would be back before morning arise, he said, and that note comforted her. She couldn't resist. No one ever considered her an equal, and the thrill, the excitement of an adventure was too much to hold back on.
I'm only 17, but I know about investing. Believe in something, buy shares in it, watch it grow. So, what if you could invest in the future? The future of kids, like a stock. Not the kind of stock that's about making money, but a stock for social change. A whole new kind of investment called Better Futures. When you invest, it helps kids go to college. I could be one of the first college graduates from my family, the first philanthropist from my neighborhood. And if I'm the first, then maybe there's a second and a third. Believe in us, invest in us, watch us grow. My name is Sydney, and I'm your dividend.
welcome to this month's episode of Counselor's Corner. I'm Jill English, and this is Lori Holbrook, and we're both counselors at Dow High School. And we're here to give you information today on all things happening in the Counseling Center across the district. April is a busy month for state standardized testing in the high schools across the state of Michigan. On April 12th and 13th, all juniors will be taking the SAT and Work Keys test. Also, on one of those two dates, all 9th and 10th graders will be taking the PSAT, which is a practice SAT test. The SAT that the juniors take can be used for college admissions. During the last 2 weeks of April, juniors will finish up state testing by taking the M-STEP, which will be an online test in science and social studies. Each student will have a designated slot in that 2-week window to test.
The third marking period ends April 8th, which means that the final marking period of the year begins on April 11th. It will be important to monitor grades using Home Access Center so that your student can have a strong finish to the end of the school year. We will register juniors with Parchment during the M-STEP portion of their testing. Parchment is a website that we use for students to send their transcripts to colleges. So we will help them to register and teach them how to use the website. If your student is planning to take the SAT or the SAT-2 subject tests on May 7th, you will need to register on the College Board website by April 8th. That's it for this month. Check back next month when we have more information for you.
And then from this angle, it all makes a star.
I'm a teacher. Let me tell you what I make. I make learning a privilege, not a chore. And frustration, a tool, not an obstacle. I make working hard seem easy, and giving up impossible.
And then we're going to turn on the lights and everybody look up.
I make an old subject feel like a fresh thought.
What's your reaction here? Yeah, exactly.
And unconventional methods
Okay, what else?
common.
This is their world.
Nothing.
And then they die. Go ahead, go, go, go.
I'm a teacher. I make more.
Welcome back to MPS Today. We're here with high school counselors Nancy Bussino and Doug Bradford. Doug and Nancy, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You bet. Now tell us a little bit about yourselves. How long have you been with the district and what do you do?
Well, I've been with the district. It will be 19 years this summer.
Okay.
I was a teacher at the Juvenile Care Center for 5 years in the day treatment program, and then I was an EI self-contained teacher for 4, and then I've been in counseling, I guess, 11 years now, if that adds up to 19 years.
Sure.
At Midland High.
Okay. And what do you enjoy about being a counselor?
I like being able to work with the kids, being with them one-on-one, individual, and I also like that we get to do some group lessons, and so I get a little bit of that teaching background back in there,
Yeah.
but a little bit of everything.
So it's a real variety for you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Doug, how about you?
I've been at Dow High for 19 years as a counselor, all 19 years. I came to Midland Public Schools from Bullet Creek, where I taught 3rd, 4th, and 6th grade for 6 years and was a middle school counselor for 2 years, and then came in here and had the opportunity to be a high school counselor.
Yeah. And how about you? Your day as a counselor, I mean, what do you enjoy about it the most?
Again, working with kids individually. I mean, every day you never know what to expect. Everything comes up different, and so I like that variety. And working with the kids individually and watching them, help them through tough times, but also watch them as they with their accomplishments and those type of things.
Yeah, watch them shine too.
Yeah, the college part and getting them ready for careers and the next step in life is a lot of fun.
I bet. I bet. Well, a big part of your job this year, I would guess, is helping people feel comfortable about the new SAT. So just to give a little background for our viewers, in the past, all 11th graders in the state of Michigan took the ACT as part of the MEP tests. And now we have what they call the M-STEP, and the new SAT is part of that M-STEP process, right? So what will the 3 days of testing for the M-STEP be like?
Well, the first day on Tuesday will be similar to where we had the ACT in the past on the Tuesday, the first day. We'll have the SAT on that day. So it'll be very similar.
And that's Tuesday, April 12th.
Yes, that's in April instead of March.
So all students will take all 11th graders will take the
All the
SAT on
juniors,
that day. And then there's Wednesday and Thursday that week.
Right. Wednesday, the 11th graders will take the work keys, which is a shorter test. That's about a 3-hour test, where the SAT is about a 5-hour test.
A little bit longer.
Yep, and that'll be Wednesday. They'll do that on Wednesday, and then later in April, at different times, they'll be taking the third part, which is online now, which is part of the M-Step, and that's taken online. Takes about an hour to hour and a half, and they'll have a session of that. We'll schedule that throughout the last week of April, I believe.
In the individual classrooms?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Well, then let's focus on the SAT. So not only is the SAT replacing the ACT, but it's a new version of the SAT, right? So you've been studying this. Tell us about the different parts of the new SAT.
Well, with the new SAT, and if you don't mind, I'm going to look at my notes just to remind me. There is the reading, the math, and the math portion has a calculator and the non-calculator portion, and then there's a writing and language arts part. And there's also the essay part, because they'll also do the essay with us when we do the SAT with the juniors.
And the essay is optional, but we're going to have all of our students take that.
And same thing when they did the ACT, that was optional, the essay, but we always did it with them. And then if they do it on their own, do a retake or whatever, then that's optional to them.
Okay.
And then the questions are just more evidence-based questions, more real-life situations. So they're looking at more problem-solving, multi-step type questions, just making it more real-life based.
Yeah, that's probably the best.
Now, I know in the past there used to be a lot of focus on vocabulary for the SAT, and obviously that's still going to be a big part of it, but it sounds like that's been de-emphasized a little bit. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think it's more reading.
Right, there's a lot more reading in everything.
Yeah.
And then you have to draw information out of
it.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, the types of questions are a lot longer as far as reading. Before they maybe a couple sentences, but some of them now are 3 or 4 sentences, the examples that we have seen so far.
Right, and the questions in each section increasingly get more difficult within that section.
All right. So there's informational reading and writing, and then there's a math section you said has some calculator and then some not calculator based questions, and then the essay portion as well. What do we know about the essay?
I don't know anything about the essay.
The one thing I do know that is going to be a little longer. They're going to have 50 minutes, I believe, instead of 25 with the old SAT. I think it was 25 minutes. They now have 50 minutes. And that's the main difference, I guess, I know of it. I'm sure there are some other differences I might not be aware of.
Well, as students or parents are thinking about preparing for April 12th, what would you recommend? I know there's some resources out there for students.
Well, we've already gotten all the juniors on College Board and Khan Academy. So both of those are great resources for studying for the test, for just finding information out about the test. And on Khan Academy, there are 4 practice tests. And so we've encouraged the students to go in and do 1, maybe 2 of those on their own, but not all of them, because the teachers are going to be doing those in the classroom as well. And then Khan Academy links to College Board. So it will take their scores and look at their strengths and weaknesses, what areas they need to work on, and the teachers will be heavily, heavily working on this in the classrooms over the next few weeks.
So if they go to Khan Academy, and we'll put that website on the screen for everybody, but if they go to Khan Academy, they can get practice tests, and it sounds like all students have accounts on there now to do that. And then they'll get some targeted feedback information. You should study this or focus on that, right?
Yes, that's our understanding.
Exactly.
That's what I'd heard too, Sounds great. Well, what do you know about, and I know we're just being introduced to this new test, but I'm sure there's people that are wondering about colleges and how they're going to view the test, and do you have any insight on that?
Well, college, we've kind of asked that question of college reps, and they're not sure yet, but in checking the scores and what they anticipate, like the normal scores are going to be, an average score, they're anticipating 1150 and above is going to be in the 75th percentile or above, so those are going to be real strong scores. The scoring is different in this. It used to be range from 600 to 2400 in the SAT. It's now 400 to 1600 in the SAT. And the scoring used to be, when you remember taking the SAT, you lost a point or a quarter of a point for each question you missed. That is no longer there. So guessing is encouraged now, just like the ACT. We always said goal would be to answer every question. Well, that's what we're going to tell kids on this one, answer every question, because you're not penalized for missing any questions.
So in the past there was a slight penalty, but now you need to have an answer for every question.
You might as well answer it. It's to your interest.
And there'll be concordance tables available where they'll have the ACT scores next to the ACT scores, so you can compare. This was a good ACT score, this was an ACT score Michigan State wanted, and kind of compare the two so you get an idea, to see what the difference is. And yeah, like Doug said, we're learning too what the colleges are looking for.
Yeah, I think, you know, when we get to maybe June or early next fall, we'll have an idea of what scores they're really looking for. But I know when we talked to the rep from Michigan and even Saginaw Valley, they're saying we're not sure yet what that means.
Right.
So they're still learning too.
Sure. We're all learning together, it sounds like
Right.
a little bit. But the students will still get a percentile score with
Yes.
it, right? So they'll be able to say, I got this score on the SAT, and here's how it compared
Right.
to other students. So I'm sure colleges will be paying attention to that.
Mm-hmm.
So what I heard you saying is students should answer every question,
Yep.
for sure. And if they go to Khan Academy, they can have a chance to do some practice testing.
Yep.
And I also heard you say that teachers are working with students in school to help them prepare, and that's true of both high schools.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Well, is there anything else that you want our parents or students to know about the new SAT?
I think that covers most of it.
I think that's it.
I will add, a lot of parents and students have asked at Midland High, I'm not sure about Dow High, should they also take the ACT?
Sure.
And we encourage it.
Yeah.
It's still another good practice standardized test, and they can see their ACT score compared to the SAT score. So it wouldn't hurt to still take it.
Okay. And they should check with the colleges that they're interested in applying
Exactly.
Right, yeah. Some colleges still may want them to take the ACT. I think most of them will gradually switch over to the SAT, at least in the state of Michigan. But I think that you should take both at this point.
Right, especially during this transition time.
Yeah, and it seems like we see that more and more, right, where colleges say SAT or ACT, and you need to take one of them for sure, but they don't seem to specify as much as they used to.
Right.
Yeah,
Seems like it anyways,
Yeah.
right? Well, okay, last question then. What would you tell a student about preparing for April 12th? So April 11th comes, and they're leaving school. What should they be thinking about doing to make sure they're ready to go April 12th and have a great test day?
Well, I think even before then, you start getting rest. I think rest is a really important thing. Eating properly, again, not just the morning of, but the night before and leading up into that thing so that your body is in good shape. And you think better if you're rested.
Yeah.
So that's a big thing. Come prepared, come prepared for a long day. Dress in layers, because you never know what the testing facility is going to be like as far as temperature. Sometimes it's cold, and sometimes you're really hot, so dress in layers. What other things can you think of,
Well,
Nancy?
and just as far as preparing as far as academically, look at their other test scores and see where their weaknesses and strengths were, so they know what to work on a little bit in between when they do those study tests. And, talk to their teachers too and ask them for advice and what they think they should work on as far as their reading and math and other subjects.
Sure.
So, and they come in, and I can't emphasize enough, come in prepared with their pencils, their calculator, their ID, and everything. It's good practice, because once they get to college and they are going to be taking lots of standardized tests, they need to learn to be prepared for all that.
And you and the teachers will be telling them this, but I just heard you say they need to have pencils, calculator, and an ID with them. So school ID if they don't have
Correct. Something with a picture
Some
on
kind
it.
of picture ID.
Yep.
Okay. Well, great. Well, Nancy Busno and Doug Bradford, thank you very much for coming today to talk with us about the new SAT.
All right. You're welcome. Thank you.
And thank you, our viewers, for joining us as well. And we'll catch you next time on MPS Today.